meeting to order. It's now 9 o'clock, October 12th, Thursday. Get a roll call, please.
Chairman Vincent.
Here.
John Colapetro.
Here.
Linda Schwartz.
Here.
Jeff Maturo.
Here.
Rick Sims.
Here.
Meg Jacobson.
Here.
Carolyn Gallagher.
Here.
What I'd like to start with first, if the board doesn't mind, can we move public comments first? The presentation may be a little long, and our discussion may be a little long, and I know there's one person here that would like to say what he has to say and move on. Would that be okay with you guys?
Yes, sure.
Okay, well, let's have public comment first.
Okay. Very good, thank you. It's always good to have the comments before you have the vote. What was I going to say?
Introduce yourself.
The 5-year plan is just a plan. I don't know. It's required by somebody, and it can be changed at any time. So it's just an act of planning. But I appreciate the chance to talk, even though I don't have much to say this morning. I read the agenda, and I'm curious to see item B. Have some discussion on that. So, all right, thank you.
If you could, for the record.
Rick Steinmeier, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah.
Any other comments on anything on the agenda today?
Hi, my name is Jim Magnus. We own some property on 041, and I just wanted to give a message and a note of support for Tony and his project that you guys will be reviewing today. It seems like the city has spent a lot of money on the downtown, and we've finally got a developer that's willing to spend some money downtown to do some development. I think that you ought to do what you can to try to make the project feasible for everybody and to try to make the project work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. If I could, we have a new member on the board. I'd like to introduce Linda Schwartz.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm looking forward to this. I've watched a lot of LPA meetings online and attended a few meetings, so I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us and helping the city out.
For the record, Jacqueline Genson, I just wanted to inform the board that the applicant for the second item on the agenda had telephoned earlier this week. The applicant is sick. He's very instrumental in this application process, so they asked if they could go ahead and postpone the public hearing for the second item on the agenda until your November meeting. They do apologize. They really were excited to get this project going. And before the LPA and the City Council, but the applicant, Tony Mazzolino, is very instrumental, and he wanted to be here. So we graciously accepted their continuance to the November meeting.
Okay, does the board agree?
So that's, I assume, a short meeting today then?
Depending on discussion for your first item.
Okay.
Okay, well, won't we get into the first? Oh, is that okay
Yeah.
with you guys?
It's fine with me, but I did have a question about that. Was there going to be a presentation of some sort? Yes.
That the
okay.
applicant was going to do. Typically in these applications, when they're privately initiated, the applicant goes ahead and prepares the application and does the bulk of the presentation, and it's really the burden of proof on them to demonstrate why the request should be approved or denied.
Okay. I had called you, and that was one of the reasons, because I needed some more clarification on things. And I was going to suggest that we have some kind of presentation. So
most definitely.
That's good.
Most definitely. And typically in these situations, we always encourage that the applicant go first, and then staff prepares their presentation as well, so we can provide our review of the application request and explain our recommendations.
Right, and each one of you, I've talked before about the legislative basis of comprehensive planning and decision-making. I don't know if you want to hear, unless your decisions are irrational. If a reasonable person can come to your conclusion, your vote would be sustained in courts of law. The typical case where it wasn't upheld was where the evidence did not point towards it at all in a comp plan application. So it's a pretty easy standard. It's whether or not you thing for the city? It's consistent with the existing schools' objectives and policies, and will the change enhance the city as the city develops, and is it consistent with all the key terms in the Growth Management Act?
Will
Okay.
the hearing delay to November affect their ability to get approval?
It shouldn't affect their ability to get approval, because sometimes you can have some of these go, in the old days, easily 5-6 years through the approval, The approval process can be long and cumbersome, so I wouldn't worry about a 1 month. We're continuing it at their request, and the first one we had to continue because of the hurricane, because it was on your September 14th agenda, and there was no way the city could do it on September 14th.
Could you just give us the date on
I have a
November
couple
date?
of questions that
Your
are not
November date is November 9th.
about this specific thing, but
which is
about
the
the
Thursday,
general thing. Could
beginning
I
at
ask
8
something?
beginning at 9
Absolutely,
a.m.
Rex.
Thank you.
Okay, Rex?
I have a couple of little comments that don't really pertain to this, but are part of it. And one of them, I have a question for Mr. Sweet. When this board did the overlay, we worked very diligently for many months drawing it up and establishing procedures and uses of the various sites and so forth. And so it was my understanding that anything that was within the Old 41 corridor area, if it was zoned commercial, it automatically qualified for the, for the condos above it. And I remember we went to great length about determining 15 units to the acre maximum density, and then the city developed a bonus of 5, I believe it was. So we spent a great deal of time on this, and so it kind of came as a mystery to me that all at once that's not exactly the case. Am I missing something here?
Yes and no. So in this particular instance, what has happened is part of the property he has is in that corridor, but he has acquired some property that's outside the corridor, but contingent or adjacent to him, being separated by, say, by Center Street.
Yes.
And that was always intended to be some sort of multifamily. And what he has proposed here, and the amendments he's asked for, is to allow to develop a PD, a planned development, to incorporate all the property he has acquired, and to be able to shift density and square footage amongst that in a true mixed-use fashion. So I think what he's asking for is what we always intended, but until, like all well-laid plans, until we get to the point where we're actually putting pen to paper and drawing it up and seeing how it works, there is an issue. Also, as part of this, we found some other issues with our comp plan, which we're working through with our outside legal counsel to address these things so that we don't have these in the future.
So my thought about qualifying for the mixed use is true. It just so happened that the piece of property he has in discussion here is outside of that.
One of the parcels he has,
Okay? Now,
Is outside of
that's
it.
really good, because now it brings up my other question. When we laid out this in 2004, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the area just exactly south of his properties that lie east of Center Street.
okay?
But his is in our overlay. But immediately south of his overlay, there's been a lot of gerrymandering done, and there's a big hunk taken out in there. And it kind of bothers me because I look at this property he has on the east side, and it goes back to Lightner Creek. And a portion of his rear property encompasses Lightner Creek. And I look at that as one of the water issues that we could develop, and yet it appears it has been cut out of our map. So it looks to me like this is a golden opportunity for us to have a walkway, a park-like setting or something along Lightner Creek there, because once houses get built there and everything, it is no longer available. I think of Oak Creek, you can only see it twice, once on Old 41 and once on Pennsylvania Bridge, and it's 3.5 miles long, and it's shut off to the community. And so here we have an opportunity to develop a nice little water venue, and I'm afraid that it's outside of our designated area where we could really do that. Is this, and we definitely in our policies, we have a policy for visual of a scenic waterway program and so forth and so on. So it's definitely part of our comp plan, and yet we seem to be missing an opportunity here.
And that's happened frequently with this particular map. I want to point out what City Council, with your assistance, of course, has done is Felt's overlay, for example, which is outside that map. We have also, so you have Felt's overlay. You had some other overlay work. If you look over near the railroad, there's one row of streets. Now, eventually, we discontinued that discussion, but that was something also. So it's not as if this map is, it's very difficult. Obviously, we can't amend the map in its current form and its style, that the RPMK, but we have had add-ons and changes, and that's not something that's not undoable. I mean, there is something doable if it makes common sense plan.
Let me address it real quick, and that is, Lightner Creek is part of the overall downtown redevelopment area.
Yes,
Okay. So.
but it's not part of the overlay.
Yes, it is, but it's not part of the core.
Okay.
Okay? So what happens when you look at the map on Lightner Creek, if you go to Center Street, or Center, and then you go east, immediately you have the multifamily area, we call it Area 4. And then on the other side of the creek, they are in the overlay in this area called 2B, which is single family, which we encourage people to put porches and do, take some of the more concrete vernacular that's been built and give them some incentives through setbacks and so forth to make it look more old Florida, put porches on. We have a closer front yard setback if they do that and some other things. So the creek is within the overall overlay, but it's not within the core. And the downtown core, which basically is the depth of the lots on either side of Old 41, that's the urban core, and that's the area where the mixed use was granted. And so what he has done, he's acquired some property out adjacent to the urban core within the overlay that he wants to add to it. And that's the reason for his proposed amendments, is to allow a way to vision that and incorporate that into it. One of the things that he has talked about, now, we've got to sort of get the progression correct here, is first thing he needs to do is amend the comp plan to allow what he's asking to do, to be able to have this mixed-use development that we sort of can swap amenities from parcel to parcel. One of the reasons he said he wanted to do that is he wanted to put like a kayak launch. He wanted to take advantage of Lightner Creek because he
Now,
has
will
that
that
property.
will that be a bonus?
Don't know. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay, but
We-
that is how you earn a 5.
That's one of the ways you earn bonus density, absolutely.
All right. Excuse me.
Okay. The same way, he also, part of this, he owns the property where Maria's is. And if there, you have opportunities to cross and gain access down to River Park and so forth. We have the bridge that goes over from South Riverside. And so he's looking to see what he can do to enhance and embellish that. Now, obviously, he's doing this for his own benefit. If he's selling condos and they can get to these different facilities as part of the recreation, he's got a better product to sell. He also has made it clear, again, this is not part of this petition, but evidently there is certain, I'm going to say federal assistance, but he has told us that being on the east side of Old 41, there are certain loans that he can get for selling property that make it more enticing than it is if on the other side because of flooding and all these other issues. So those are those are things and enhancements that he's talking about. Again, that's on the PD side. That's not on the comp plan side, but we can't get to the PD until we make these certain changes in the comp plan.
Okay, but and I agree with everything you say, and I think it's a good project. So the thing that I'm getting at is, I think this is an opportunity for the city to expand the access or the visual part of Lightner Creek there into some kind of a meaningful program, or one of these days it's going to be gobbled up and then it'll be too late.
I'm going to take it a step further. I agree with you, and I'm going to take it a little step further, and that is in our discussions, and we're not prepared to on some of this yet because we've been talking with outside legal counsel. We have been talking about how maybe to make some changes overall in the downtown to make, in other words, take this, realizing what this, the good and the bad of it, and how do we enhance it so that we don't have this problem in other areas, because I think there's opportunities throughout the downtown, whether it's Oak Creek, Lightner Creek, whether it is the parks. There's opportunities that we need to explore to really enhance everything as best as we can. And so I agree with where you're headed at here, and that's something that as staff that we've been working with outside legal counsel to come up with ways to possibly make this a more encouraging process to get people to do those things you want them to do.
Thank you.
Jay, if I could ask, just to expand on that a little bit, he's also asking for this to be a new model of development for the city, a different kind of model, where you are making lands more contiguous, therefore you get better use of the property. And I know the project, and he is designing it so that it is open to the public. It's very inviting for public use.
One, I'm going to just, and this is way off topic, but since we have a little bit of time, one of the problems you have in redeveloping older areas in Florida is everything we just experienced, flooding. And the traditional solution to that is, instead of putting the finished floor here, we put the finished floor up here. As soon as you do that, that means you got to have handicap ramps, you got to have stairs, you got to have all these different ways to access the buildings, and they're built up way above the roadway, and they're less inviting. Now, there's an alternative that's more expensive, that is to flood-proof that first floor. And so he has already given us some preliminary designs for his PD, because he's trying to process these things consecutively the best that he can. And he has made a commitment to flood-proof the building so that the building will be built at grade, so that you'll have that curb appeal, that street appeal. At the same time, it won't cause a flooding problem, and it doesn't, and by not jacking the building up, you're not shedding additional water onto your neighbor that happens when you build a building higher. Those are a lot of the things that we're dealing with on a staff level, is of how do you create the environment you want, protect, create, and accomplish the goals. And so far, we've been successful in this discussion with him. But and this is one of the reasons we're thinking there may be some more general plan changes need to be made for the downtown, so that we can accommodate all these things as other development. I personally don't think that it's a secret that once this first building is built, it's going to snowball down there. And so it's really important to set standards that we want to get these first one or two projects really going.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, we're talking about these 4 parcels, correct?
Correct.
I mean, I'm not real good with maps, and these aren't real good maps, but where's Lightner Creek?
Lightner Creek is on the east side of his east property.
Okay, I still don't see it.
Runs down Matheson.
On the east side of
We
Center
talking about
Street.
that little green line?
Yeah.
Okay.
His corner of his back lot is cut
That's
off
a
there
creek, okay.
with Lightner Creek,
Okay,
which is could be a gorgeous opportunity.
okay.
And the city about 3 years ago spent some substantial money going in and clearing the exotics out of Lightner Creek and enhancing it. And so at least a good portion of it, that was actually a drainage project. but it also enhanced the ability to kayak down it and so forth.
Well, I think that for the board here, the additional time that we have going into review of this project is important because there are a lot of, not a lot, there are a few issues here that will change the comp plan, and you need to be careful in reading that. But it does give us time to delve into it to see the impact of a project like this downtown. So we have a golden opportunity, and the additional time, I think, helps for us to do that.
Can we ask general questions here about this whole thought? Like, let me ask the question, and you can say yes or no. I'm sitting here on the fence because I thought this is sort of a good idea. This is a good idea, and we've been talking about it a while. But I can see where there are some drawbacks, and you even said, there were. So I'm wondering if and I may be understanding this incorrectly, but I'm thinking that what they're saying is that you can have commercial area on here, and then you could put homes in there. So I'm wondering, number one, about people maybe not realizing they're buying a home in a commercial area. Second thing is you can have a residential area, and you might be able to put some commercial stuff in there, and the people may not be happy about certain things coming in there. I mean, maybe a little bookstore, a little pharmacy, I don't know what they're thinking, but that might be fine. But something else like a bar at night might not be so fine.
I think those are going to be excellent questions to ask the applicant when they present. But at this point, without having them in the same room, it might be a little premature.
I hear you. Those were just general, though, because we have no idea what he would put in, and probably he
Well-
doesn't either at this point.
He will have a list that goes along with his plan development that goes into his schedule of uses. So there will be a defined list of commercial uses that could go into those commercial areas. Depending on the building will probably depend upon which of the uses goes where. So that will be something that's submitted to the city for ultimately city council's approval.
I have another
Well,
little
every piece
question.
of property in the overlay has already been defined as to what uses can be done there. We did that 2 or 3 years ago, so those
have
are
these
very
uses, though.
specific.
Mhm. And his plan development will be even more specific.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're 3A, you're something. If you're 3B, you're something. If you're 5, you're something.
Yeah, we'll get time to get into this later.
Yeah, I was
but
trying to be more general without really pulling in the
Yeah.
person who applied for this, for that. But can I ask one more question really quick? About some of the homes that are single-family that are already there, particularly on the east side, well, maybe both sides, are they going to be affected by this? Can they have something come in, if there's a piece of property that's open, and come in commercial there with this change?
Well, I don't think we're talking about making commercial where the residential is. It's a matter of him being able to blend and have amenities over here that are for the residential. and
So the
forth.
mixed does not mean that could happen.
But one of the reasons everything is advertised and noticed and so forth is so they all have the opportunity to come in and discuss that. And I have gotten phone calls. So far, only 2, but I've gotten phone calls from people who are next to it. And one was just, I couldn't tell if they were for or against it. One was for it. The one that was calling that, you never just say, I just need to know, thank you very much. They're very polite. The other one actually said, oh, this is great. We'd love to see this happen. So.
Yeah, and in this situation, Jacqueline Genson for the record, I'll go ahead for the next packet, attach the master concept plan that's proposed so you can actually see where they're proposing the vertical mixed use, where they're proposing this single-use residential, and that might help you out a little bit better because it is segmented. So the single-use residential is on the east side of Center Street where you have the existing residential to the east, and whereas the mixed use is concentrated to the west of Center Street and along Old 41.
When it's all over said and done, we're gonna have we'd have 5 new buildings, but still the center of the attraction on the corner is gonna be the Hess stations. So literally, anything we do there is a definite improvement over having 4 Hess gas stations. So I'm curious about we've spent $16 million to get ready for this, and it seemed like this is the avenue that is going to be coming on in the next few years. And so we can't say, well, we don't want this when we've got the Hess station there on the corner as our corner.
Now Speedway. But I want to remind the board that what we're talking about here, the issue is mixed use. And we've been looking for mixed use as a way to get our downtown spurred up to where it's activity oriented. So don't overlook that fact that mixed use is a tool for redevelopment.
Would, on the mixed use, would it just be generally allowing mixed use, or would certain uses have to be approved by the city?
Well,
I mean, you have a list of
okay.
uses that
There-
are approved
right.
already, but
Yeah.
There's
But
a
if
list of
there's an
uses that are
issue-
permitted. There are some uses that may require special exception, would have to come back for the city and notices to be given. But understand, you're talking about buildings that are condominiums. And within the condominium documents, it'll outline what floors, what units, what they're allowed to do, hours of operation. All those things are generally set forth in the condo documents. So the people who are buying the residential, unless they don't read anything, should be fully aware of what they're buying, what they're doing. So, you know, we, and when I say we, that includes the state of Florida, have an interest to make sure that people, when they buy real estate, especially condominiums, that they're fully aware of what they're buying. And so those condo documents will include things. So there shouldn't be, this isn't the old 1920s land sales that they're telling you that wasn't in the swamp, okay? You know, they should be fully aware of everything that's going on when they purchase.
Is this similar to like what Coconut Point is?
Yes,
Okay, so it's, if you're buying Coconut Point, you know what you're buying.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, why don't we move on to item A?
Thank you. This is a request to review an ordinance for consistency with the comprehensive plan. I'll read the title block into the record. This is an ordinance of the City Council of Bonita Springs, Florida, adopting the 2017 five-year capital improvement program annual update, providing for legislative findings, providing for severability, providing for exclusion from codification, and providing for an effective date. This ordinance has gone for a first reading, and it was continued for a second reading on October 18th, so we can proceed forward. Let me go through the changes. This is part of your ear amendments that you did, ordinance number 1708. One of the changes was that Florida statute 163-3177 requires that local government comp plans actually contain a CIP element. And we have that in our comprehensive plan. Problem is we don't change it very often. And in order to change it annually, the decision was, do you want to change it by ordinance or change it as a comp plan amendment? And I think by the decision by council, as well as in the EAR, as well as the LPA, was let's change it by ordinance, so once a year. City Council has just completed its budget process, meaning that since the budget has been completed, this is what City Council proposes for its five-year CIP plan. Now, the pleasure of this is I'm just the lawyer. I wrote the first the two-page ordinance, the nice easy part, which will probably be the model we'll use every year going forward. This is a multi-department CIP program. So you can see things where City Hall has repairs. You can see exotic removals for right-of-way, conservation. These are all the ways the city plans to pay for it and includes the funding sources necessary. So, I mean, this is their budget numbers and what City Council did.
So this morning, our job here is to approve this budget.
It's not to approve the budget.
Not approve budget,
necessarily.
to-
It's to approve the ordinance.
Right.
As the consistency with the comp plan, and it's straight out of the Growth Management Act, which is
Okay.
163-3177 now. you're not responsible for how city council forwards each project. That's city council's job. The nice thing is you as citizens, once a year, can come to city council during the budget process, ask for them to move it, and it also provides an easier way to find your 5-year CIP.
Okay, thank you. Board, questions?
I realize this budget's already been approved by council. There's a couple things that just jumped out. One is for $240,000 for a highway monument. Somebody want
I can
to tell me
explain
what that is? And the
it's
flagpole for 40 grand?
It's part of the mayor's branding concept that city council agrees with, which is to have something like a lighthouse or the dolphins in a river. So when you come to Bonita Springs, you know you've made this place. And it's been something that they've discussed about in the budget, different locations for where it's appropriate. And it is being worked on by the Assistant City Manager, Arlene Hunter.
Okay. The next one that I just need to know what it is, $300,000 for splash pads?
So we're in Parks and Rec, right, I hope?
Yeah.
A splash pad is, if you go to Disney World, for example, and you go to Marketplace, they have the area where the kids can play, or Lakes Park has a splash pad.
Okay.
It's instead of a pool, it's little cute ornaments.
Okay.
You have little kids, so you're going through that now.
He mentioned the monument. Did they ever determine if that's going to actually be in Collier County or it's going to be in here? Because I know there's some debate on where it was going to be placed.
If it's city money, it's going to be placed here. But
Okay.
I know which boundary I think they were talking
Okay.
about. It might be close to that boundary, but
Well,
Probably
is
at Beach Road, the interstate Beach Road,
Yeah,
as
that-
an introduction into the city.
So it would be down there, it wouldn't be the city proper.
it would
Like
not-
old
It would be
Bonita.
within our corporate boundaries, yes. It would be something for placemaking when you get, we would not spend money in, I would hope, we would never spend money in another jurisdiction, one that's extraterritorial, so I don't know how, it's very difficult to do. And certainly for a public purpose to put artwork in a extraterritorial.
Auditor, let me ask questions. Does the $240,000 include any work on 41, on the
I-
bridge there? Or this is just the monument
It
at,
might be the bridge, I can't tell you at this
Okay.
time. I've sat through, I've listened to them talk about it, but I'm afraid to commit.
I have a question on flood stormwater management. There's a line, Spring Creek Restoration, and I see it's in the 17-18 fiscal year budget plan, but not in the 18-19 or 19-20. And as I
That's-
understood, there was an allocation to be spread over 3 years, 3 fiscal years.
Again, that would be something I would talk with, that's Matt Feeney's department, and, you know, I would definitely be vigilant on it for 18, 19, and 19, 20, depending. Now, council has been talking about things, obviously not for 17, 18. These things are very fluid.
Yeah.
They change, they move. No council can bind for the next on how we're gonna spend money, so
Okay.
the next one will possibly change those CIPs.
okay, if there's no more discussion, we can,
I make a motion that we find
Yes,
it in
motion.
compliance with the comp plan.
Thank you.
do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, we have a second. First, we'll take a vote.
Carolyn Gallagher,
Aye.
Meg Jacobson,
Aye.
Rex Sims,
Aye.
Jeff Maturo,
Aye.
Linda Schwartz,
Aye.
Don Filipetro,
Aye.
Chairman Vincent.
Aye.
Next year, do you want me to try to bring staff members that actually are involved in this?
We're really
particular
not involved with making this, it's just a process that it complies, well, what they're
Right.
doing has complied with the comp plan. We really don't have any input into this at all.
And it's very tricky too, because it's in 163, so it's in the Growth Management Act. And whether it even needed to go to the LPA or not was one of those debatable
Yeah.
abundance of caution.
I remember when we started this 5, 6 years ago, that it was kind of a venture in futility because it really didn't make any
Do
difference.
anything. I mean, you can look at the body of the ordinance and say, Audrey changed this, this, this. I can't change that document, you know.
It's sort of a courtesy call to run it by here.
Well, you want to make sure, it's the same thing with impact fees. If you went into the impact fee tables and said, I want to change this, 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 we could take to council, I could tell you, well, council can make the decision to make it lower, they can't make it higher, you know, because usually everybody wants to make it higher unless we left some wiggle room in there. You can never make it higher than the actual, what passes the dual rational nexus test. So, I mean, it's a limited review, but it still needs, it's probably better because we've had ordinances, not this jurisdiction fortunately, where courts have nullified them because of the fact it didn't go to the LPA. And it was like, but that's
Okay.
a license, that's not a land use issue. It's not something physically that, you know, it's like, no, they felt differently. So sign codes, you know, that's another one, that sign codes and money, you know, how to treat it sometimes.
Let me
I
ask,
suggest that next year, we, when we approve that, we add a salary for the LPA at $40,000 per person. We'll see how effective we are.
I'll make that nomination.
Okay.
I think it's a nice idea that it's here, that we get a chance to look at it, because it jogs our memories.
Right, and it's always post-budget too, and some communities do it like a 6-month stretch. And I think by then, I kind of like the thought of doing it closer to budget. It has to be after budget. Because then it's still, everything's fresh in people's mind as opposed to 6 months later going, we got rid of this project. It's like, yes, but I still have to put it in to reflect what the budget is.
I think as a formality, it works fine. You know, we get to see it, and that makes it a formality, and you can still ask questions. Any other comments? Okay, our next meeting is November 9th. Everyone okay with that? Okay, I'd like to have an approval of the minutes from 5:11 and
Make a motion,
7:13.
we approve the minutes as presented.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, approved. We're adjourned. Thank you.